It's very, very meticulous. In fact, I think that might be the best actual adjective to use. In this case, meticulous, okay? Particularly when it comes to combat, the game does not explain a lot. Also, the pacing. Pacing has issues. I think everyone's going to agree on this one. I actually don't think you can have a good time with this game at all. I think it's quite the contrary, actually, where you will be lost and you will feel like you're wasting your time. You'll be too confused, right? I don't know. It's been tough for me. I started in December when I knew there weren't any game releases. I played it through January into February when there were game releases, but I continued to focus on it like that. And thankfully now, I feel like all that investment is paying off within Act 3. All this crazy stuff is happening, but now I'm out of time. I've been playing this game 4+ times a week. I'm out of time, man. I couldn't play it anymore. You know, as a variety streamer, right? I can only play a certain game a certain amount. Now you might say, well, you're a different case because, you know, you're a full-time gamer, but you're a variety streamer. You're right. But everyone else should have a life, right? Everyone else has a job. They have a family. They have school. They have other shit going on. They can't just sit around playing Baldur's Gate 3 all day every fucking day, right? So if that's the case, how the fuck could they get through this game fast? They can't unless they have nothing to do all day. So who's that? Who gets to sit at home all day, on their ass, has infinite money, doesn't need to work, and can just play Baldur's Gate 3 for 2 months straight? I'd like to know who this is.
Well, if we're being honest, that person is you, DSP. You're the person who has money that comes in for playing the game. You're the person who has nothing to do all day and sits on their ass. You are that person, unfortunately. Everybody else just managed to figure it out, dude. I don't know. But again, I wish that I had these responses from the normal people who beat the game. Normal people who have lives outside of playing video games, beat the game and enjoyed it, and maybe did it a second playthrough even. Because DSP is acting as though this is some impossible feat. Like this is some Herculean task akin to the Hydra.
Can someone, you say, it's me, because how did you get to that point in life? How many lotos did you win? I mean, I just don't understand it. I'm a full-time gamer, and I could only get 100 hours into this game in 2 months. You see?
But once again, that's your fault, DSP. You waste all that time with Q&A. You're the one who has to manually update your leaderboards for 1 to 2 minutes at a time. You're the person that insists on keeping those stupid leaderboards on your screen even though it has no benefit to you. You're the one who's constantly checking your emails for tips to verify that those people in your chat that are claiming they tipped you aren't trolls and lying. You're the person who's constantly going out of their way to try and hide all of the Argentinian memberships because it bothers you so much. All of these things are time losses, and that's why you don't ever get anything accomplished in these games.
So again, the point I'm making is I feel that the game is so long that it's a detriment. A game like this, perhaps, should be more streamlined. But that's my take, and you can always disagree, and that's fine. My subjective take is when I play a game, I prefer that it gets more streamlined. I prefer that I will get my reward for the insane amount of investment in it before I play 150 hours, right? And the other thing that needs to be said, and I won't know until I beat the game, hopefully, with the amount that you are investing in the game, you get a good ending. Can you imagine investing over 100 hours into a game and the ending is terrible? I mean, there's been so many choices you make in this game. Hopefully they all factor into the ending you get, right?
Well, I haven't beaten Baldur's Gate 3, so I can't exactly speak on the ending, but if there's really as many choices as he's letting on, and there does seem to be a lot of choices from the game that I've played, I can't imagine that every single one of them is going to feed into the ending. That is a ludicrous task. Nobody should be expecting that, and if you are, you're only setting yourself up for failure and to be disappointed. Sure, a lot of them should factor in, especially the bigger, more major choices that you make along the way, but to expect every single one to be, I don't think so, man. But I would love to be wrong in this scenario. If they actually incorporated every single decision that you've made along the way, I would love to see it, I guess.
Now, outside of that, another thing, okay, is basically, I want to talk about a really positive thing about the game that I really like. All right, I don't want to talk about this the entire podcast, but here's a positive thing that I like about the game that I wish more RPGs would do, all right? So I'm 100 hours into this game. So guess what level I'm at? Am I at level 50, level 70, level 99? No, I'm at level 10. Level 10. In 100 hours of gameplay, on average, it took about 10 hours per level. Okay? You might say, well, wait a minute. How does that factor in? Because in this game, levels are actually rewarding. Unlike in other RPGs where usually leveling is just an arbitrary thing. A little bit more HP, a little bit more MP. All your stats go up by a couple points. Maybe rarely you get a new ability. In this game, every level is actually meaningful. Every level. Half the time when you level up, you're getting a whole new thing to do for your character. Maybe it's a new class ability. It's a new trait that they call, and it changes the way that you play. Wow, you went from level 2 to level 3 spells. Well, all the level 3 spells are different from level 2 and they're super powerful. Oh, now you get a new trait that lets you attack an extra time or get a new kind of attack or whatever, and it's good. I hated the fact that most of the time when you're playing these RPGs, you got to get through like 5 levels before something meaningful happens. You got to go from level 20 to 25 before something happens that changes the game and makes it feel like you're more powerful. That's stupid. Why do we need 4 arbitrary levels between? Just make it that there's one level jump and that level is meaningful.
But those two systems really aren't all that different, DSP. They accomplish the same goal. One of them just accomplishes the goal a little more gradually, assuming that the actual leveling itself takes about the same amount of time. So in a game where the level cap is higher, you move through the ranks a little faster, that way you get to those big milestones at the same rate you would in a game like Baldur's Gate 3, where the level cap is 12 or 15 or whatever, and you get those big gains all the time on every level. I really don't know how you can have this complaint if they take the same amount of time. I mean, you're really gonna sit here and complain because in other games, sometimes you level up and get some extra health points and have to do another fight before you level up again, and then you get a skill point during a level? It's all the same shit at the end of the day.
And that's what they did. They streamlined the leveling process, but they actually made it feel like when you level, that's a big ass reward for you. There's been times when I was in the middle of like a dungeon or an area and I was semi-struggling, then I leveled up and all of a sudden my character's so much more powerful now that now I can just plow through and kick ass, and I like that about it. Give me that big reward for the amount of investment I'm doing in the game. And I feel like the leveling system is one of the best I've ever seen in any RPG. I want more RPGs to do that.
But there's a flip side to that, DSP, in that same exact situation. Because had there been smaller levels where they just granted you those couple of points here and there and not made such a big impact on your character, you might have had an extra little bit of damage or an extra little bit of health that would have gotten you through that without having to absolutely stomp them in the end. You would have had a struggle on your hands, an engaging struggle that you would have came out victorious on because you had those extra couple of points. But instead, because of the large impact that the levels have on your character, you went from getting your ass beat to beating their ass in just a couple of seconds. Also, older RPGs used to use this system all of the time with the smaller level caps and larger gains per level, but people like to see the number go up. They want to see the progress that they're making. People get addicted to watching the number rise, and I think that's one of the main reasons why the level caps in games are so high now, because people play games more, they invest more time into them, and they like to see the number go up.
I'm tired of just get a level and waste time. What was the point of the level, right? There's too many RPGs where you constantly just gain levels and nothing happens. I mean, even Elder Scrolls is guilty of it. The meter goes up and someone plays a drum. Great, what the fuck did that do for me? Nothing. Right? It didn't fucking improve my game, right? So
to address that specifically, yes, it didn't directly improve your game. It didn't make you a better character because your one-handed went from 56 to 57, but that is progress into making your character better. That's them telling you that you've hit a milestone, you've made that next step, you are that much closer to getting the perk that you want for your weapons that is going to make them better. I don't see how he's missing this. This is them letting you know that you are making gradual progress, that all of the actions that you're taking are not in vain, that if you keep playing the way that you do, if you keep making the progress like you're making it, you will see the gains from it. You will be reaping the benefits. That is supposed to keep you driving forward. That is supposed to keep you playing so that you can finally get to that next point where you actually unlock something and get something for all of your hard work. But DSP sounds like he wants instant gratification. He doesn't want to know that he's making progress. He just wants to get his level at some point and unlock a bunch of shit that's going to make him more powerful. And this is not me saying that Baldur's Gate 3 at all has a bad leveling system. I actually quite enjoy it, and it reminds me of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and I love that game too. But there's pros and cons to both of these systems, even though they are minor. At the end of the day, it's all the same shit, so I'm not going to sit here and praise it one way or the other like DSP is. That's the part that's so confusing to me.
I definitely like that about the game. And I will say this, 100 hours in, they did a very good job now that we're this far in with character development. A lot of these characters have very much had evolving stories that developed over time, some better than others. Like, I would say, if you take a look at the whole party, like Lae'zel, Shadowheart, you could argue Astarion, but basically there's like 3 or 4 party members that have had really, really good story arcs that are coming to culmination now. I do feel there's some characters that are not as good. Like, I actually feel like Will and Gale just don't have great story arcs. They have stories, but they're just not that interesting or involved. Like, Lae'zel completely evolves as a character over the course of the game. By the end of the game, she's changed as a person. That's what you want to see in a good narrative, right? Some of these characters, they're just like kind of really one-dimensional, and it's just one little thing they're following the whole game, but others just like way better, okay? But I like that. I want meaningful characters in my games, and I feel like they're doing a good job with that, and I'm curious to see how these character stories end. Some of them is really well done, okay?
I don't know if this actually played a part into whether or not DSP enjoyed these characters, but I do think that it's worth pointing out to some degree that the two characters that he seemed to pick the biggest problem with as far as their story and arc is concerned is Will, the one urban style companion you get, and Gale, who is a little limp-wristed if you ask me. Not saying that he is, because all of the characters are technically one way or another depending on whether your character is a girl or a boy, but he's got some traits, and I think that it's very odd that those are the two people that DSP decided to have an issue with in the game. Hell, even Astarion, a fan favorite, someone who has some of the best voice acting I've probably ever heard in a video game, gets the meh from DSP. Well, you could argue Astarion.
The thing is, I'm sure everyone's going to have a different take on that, but I like the fact that you get, at first I didn't care who any of these fucking people were, and you get them all at the beginning pretty much. Like, you get every party member almost right off within the first 20 hours. You have everyone. So it's like, so now how do I know what happens, right? And it's like, well, eventually you'll get your answers. You got to be invested in the game, and I do like where the plot is going with a lot of these characters, so that's a good thing, right? So honestly, my major complaints about the game are the combat isn't as interesting as I felt it could be because it's too complicated, too slow-paced. I do feel like, sadly, it's too long, too much of a time investment of a game. And I'll say one other complaint. Now I'm starting to notice at the end of the game some lack of polish and issues. I'm definitely noticing that. Like, now we're in Act 3. We're seeing some bugs and things happen, some weird things happen that you wish didn't happen. I guess when you get a game this long and this daunting of a game with this much content in it, right? That essentially you're looking at a situation where, yeah, this is crazy that there's this much investment in it, and they're going to have flaws at the end. You can't have a game with this much content that's not going to start to break down. I've actually heard Act 3 was way worse at the beginning of the game, and a lot of people said, yes, the entire game breaks down in Act 3. It's like a buggy mess. But now people are saying they've patched it a lot, and it's a lot more solid. So that's a good thing, obviously.
And where did you hear this from, DSP? Your dents in chat, they were telling you that they agree with you and that you're actually right and the game is terrible in Act 3 and it used to even be way worse? Is that what we're talking about here? How are you going to sit here and speak on something that you didn't experience, something that you actually don't know happened, about a game that you don't even like?
So there you go. But there's a lot of positives about the game, too. Like I said, I wouldn't be investing 100 hours of my stream time in the last 2 months if I didn't feel like this game wasn't worthy of that. There's a lot of great moments we've had with this game, a lot of memes that are coming out of it, a lot of fun times, a lot of great engagement. I'll say this is one of the most engaging games that I've ever played. We're playing it, and every time you guys are here to help me with it, we talk about the lore, we talk about game mechanics. You enjoy my rage when I get frustrated, but you also like the fact that I'm really enjoying the story elements and making interesting choices. A lot of people have even said, wow, your playthrough's different than mine because you made different choices, and we like that, right? So that's cool.
So even he has to acknowledge that whenever he plays Baldur's Gate 3, he's getting the support that he wants in the form of the tip skull. And people are showing up and they're actively being engaged every single time and they are having a good time with the game. But yet we still wanted to put it on the back burner for Final Fantasy VII. We're still desperately trying to get away from Baldur's Gate 3 as fast as possible to make time for all of these other games that people are just not enjoying, like a Dragon. I just don't understand what this business strategy is. He has a game that's working for him, that his audience is enjoying, that they are actively paying for and engaging with. You would think that he would try and ride this train to success. You would think that he would try and cash in on this and continue to do it until the money dries up. But no, he can't wait to be done with Baldur's Gate 3. He can't wait to stop playing the game. This is a beggar who's finally found something that makes him the money that people consistently hand him money for, and he doesn't want to do it. And I think it's because the mental power that playing Baldur's Gate 3 requires from DSP is just too much, dude. It's too much like a job. It's too much like work. And DSP is deathly allergic to any form of work. I wouldn't be surprised if the guy didn't wipe his own ass because it required too much of him.
But honestly, I'll tell you, I'm shocked, because here's the thing. When you think about all the other games out there that are mainstream successes, Fortnite and or other team-based online shooter games that are very popular, all the rage right now, Call of Duty, Madden, and or FIFA, which I don't think FIFA anymore, but you know what I mean, like those yearly sports games that were always a huge hit, right? When you think of all of these tried and true, sell the shit out of every year style games, right? That's mainstream gaming. You have to understand that. So for a game like this to somehow have broken through that wall of what's popular and hit the mainstream and become a game that everyone knows and freaking everyone played and or at least bought, probably didn't finish, but are playing, and a game that won Game of the Year not only among gaming journalists, but also among common gamers. That is a feat. But again, I have to ask questions such as, Did it really win it on its own merits of being an outstanding game, which thankfully it is, right? Or did it win it on its merits of other things? Like, all you saw in the media when the game came out was, are you aware that you can make love to every single person in camp? And did you know that there's kissing animations and you could have genitalia animations and things? It's like, what? But why are we talking about this?
I'm asking that same question, DSP. Why are we talking about this? Why are we giving the games media any of our time? I don't give a shit what they think. I really never have. They've shown themselves to be untrustworthy and pointing out the wrong aspects of the video game for pretty much my entire life. DSP, the person who claims to hate the games media the most and hates all of these journalists for their clickbait articles and talking about aspects of games that nobody cares about, is constantly bringing up that they were talking about this aspect about a game. Why are you letting them dictate how you feel about the game, DSP, and why are you so desperately trying to find a way to discredit all of the things that Baldur's Gate 3 does that make it a great game? Why do you seem to have a vendetta against Baldur's Gate 3? If it's not a game for you, you don't like it, just say that up front, be honest about it, and quit playing it. Instead of constantly playing the game and looking for ways at all times to discredit it, to say a negative remark about the game. Is this all just because you're embarrassed that you said when Baldur's Gate 3 came out that in 3 months nobody was going to be talking about the game anymore and then it went on to win Game of the Year? Because if that's the case, that's even more embarrassing than just being wrong, because you're letting your ego get in the way of experiencing a good game and having a good time with your audience.
Is that the core of the game, right? Is it Baldur's Boner 3 or is it Baldur's Gate 3? So why does that have to become the focus that everyone talks about when you talk about the game instead of the actual good things about the game? There's great things about the game. I would say that relationship shit is the least one out of all of them. There's a feature in there if you want it, great. Enjoy it. But that's not even what the focus of the game is, so why did that become the public discourse?
He's so tired of hearing about it, but he's the one that's constantly bringing it up. Maybe I'm out of touch with real gamers, but every time that I talk to somebody who is playing or has played Baldur's Gate 3, the romance options are only mentioned in passing as a meme. DSP's the only one that's still making this a big deal. He's making this the identity for the game. And if he doesn't like that aspect of the game, he doesn't have to engage with it, but he also doesn't have to be a weirdo about it. And I don't know why he's letting these journalists that he claims that he hates all of the time have an influence on his life like this, where they're actively affecting his opinion on a game. Like anyone actually gives a shit about game journalists and their opinion.
Why is the public discourse so fucking immature about these games? Seriously, like right now, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has tons of great stuff about it, amazing things. Guess what's the #1 thing about it on the internet? Oh, when they get to Costa del Sol and everyone's wearing a swimsuit. Look how hot literally every party member is. And not just the girls, the guys, oh, they're so hot, they're ripped in their fucking Speedos, underwear. It's like, that's like a moment in the game meant for fan service. That's not the game. Why does that all that people talk about, right? It's like, why does this become the discourse about the game? You know what I want to hear about? Other things about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that are good. Not, you posted that for fucking 400,000 reposts on fucking social media. You know what I mean? Stupid.
Look, if they didn't want you to make remarks about Tifa's Yonkers, they wouldn't have made them so remarkable. But if you don't want this to be the discourse around the game, then why don't you be the change that you want to see? Why don't you make different remarks about the game? Why don't you bring attention to other aspects of the game that you're excited for? I know that this clip is before the game comes out, so we didn't actually have an opportunity to play it, but he's again still sitting here talking about something that he claims he hates when other people bring up. He's just riling himself up so he can be the very thing that he claims to hate, a person who's bringing attention to all of this sexual style content.
And I will say this about Baldur's Gate 3. I have to wonder, would this game have sold as well as it did if it didn't have all that, right? You compare that also to a game like Cyberpunk. When Cyberpunk 2077 came out, even though the game was leaky dog shit when it originally released, everyone was talking about, oh my God, there's all this in the game and that in the game and this sex and that sex and sex. And it's like, it's not a sex game. It's not a fucking rated X porno game. So why is that what everyone talks about? It's disappointing for humanity that we still degrade ourselves to that level, that this is what the focus is. I mean, is it in the game? Okay. Is that all we have to talk about? No, but that's what happens. Like, people just can't control them fucking selves for some god reason.
You'd think given that DSP has some sort of business degree, he would understand the very basic concept of sex sells, and that's always been true and will probably always be true. But nobody's gonna pay $70 for a 100-hour game, play all the way through it simply because they had romance options. Especially when those romance options are as shallow as they are. If they do, they're just gonna be disappointed and not go on to vote it as Game of the Year. So how big of a difference is he really gonna sit here and pretend that it made on the game's sales numbers, on the game's reception? perception. And I have to point out that the way that he talks about relationships and having sexual content in things, the way he describes it as degrading ourselves, you can tell this dude is just not interested in anything of the sort in real life. And that's not just meant to be a dig at the guy saying, oh, he doesn't get laid, but like you can see how uncomfortable he actually feels about it personally.
This game is great on its own merits. It doesn't need that. The fact that it's in there is, I guess, an extra. But my God, I wonder how many people ran out like horn dogs and bought the game because they heard this, right? You gotta wonder. You actually gotta wonder. I wonder if they did like a poll, like an actual poll of people who bought Baldur's Gate 3. All the people who bought it, how many people actually would say, yes, that was a factor in my decision to buy the game because it had that content, right? I wonder. For me, zero, but I still really like the game, right? So you gotta wonder what the mindset of people is, right?
If I'm gonna be honest, me personally, no, I don't wonder how many people bought the game just for that reason. It's really none of my concern. I don't care why other people played the game, in all honesty. As long as they walked away and enjoyed it, I guess the game was for them. Isn't it ironic, though, that DSP is questioning other people's interests, questioning other people's purchasing decisions, when we've all seen the many purchasing decisions that DSP has made throughout the years?
Anyway, yes, I know it's a part of nature and all that. I have to call it out because this game has that stuff. A lot of games don't, right? This game does. And you got to wonder how many people actually thought that was a major factor in their decision to buy the game. Anyway, so, my thoughts about Baldur's Gate 3 100 hours in. It's a great game. I totally get it. It is an anomaly. How often do you get an RPG with this much content all in the base game, right? In the base game. This isn't, Baldur's Gate 3 plus several DLCs and expansions. This is Baldur's Gate 3 base game has this much content in it, right? But I will say there are things about it I wish were better or different. Maybe it's just my subjective take. Personally, I like some things better. I would have preferred it to be a different way. That doesn't mean the game is bad in any way. I don't see the world as black and white. Just because there's something I don't particularly love about the game doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I don't particularly like it.
Listen to this guy beat around the bush and try and fence it on whether or not he likes this game. He's actually fence sitting on his own opinion of the game. He can't just give you a straight answer on anything. He's always beating around the bush. He's always trying to obfuscate his real feelings. Even when he does give you a straight answer, a solid yes, this game is great, he immediately follows it up with an objecting opinion. He immediately contradicts everything that he just said when he said the game was good. Because when you have that many negative things to say about something, I find it hard to believe that you feel the exact opposite way when it all comes together. Guys, all of these mechanics are trash, and I personally hate the combat, and the dialogue is stupid, and I don't like the characters, but the game's good. It's just a hard sell.
So that being said,
of course, another shout out. Let's go.
Yeah, I feel like the game is great, but I do have some criticisms of it, and I think that's fair. Now, a lot of people have said, would I have made this my game of the year for 2023 if I actually had played the entirety of the game in 2023? First of all, I still can't answer that question. I'm 100 hours into a game that's going to be like 130 or 40 hours by the time I beat it. Until I actually see the ending, I can't give that. Because imagine this. Imagine I play 130 hours and the ending sucks. That could completely skew my take on the game. Because a lot of people like to say, oh, it's not the end, the destination, it's the journey. I will agree to some extent, but man, that's a cop-out for game developers and writers who just don't know how to write.
And while that's true sometimes, I think this is another example of DSP just acknowledging the fact that he doesn't have any passion for these video games. Because a bad ending to the story shouldn't immediately sour your opinion on the entire thing. Did you enjoy the time that you spent going up to the ending? Did you enjoy the journey that you had? Because if so, was that enjoyment not worth anything to you? I personally didn't enjoy the direction that Game of Thrones went in the final seasons, and I never finished them. But that doesn't entirely skew my opinion of the show, because I enjoyed the time I watched it before it started to get worse. I liked the characters that we met. I liked the stories that we told. I thought they were interesting. Because you should be enjoying the mechanics and the gameplay. That should hold some sort of value to you, not just the story. And if you only cared about the story, like I said at the beginning, you should have been playing on a lower difficulty.
Because there's too many games these days where they have good plot ideas and good momentum, and then they just squander it by the end. And this is not just games. This happens with TV shows. This happens with movies. It's sad. You have to have a good ending to a saga for people to invest all that time into it. I really hope the ending of this game is good. Really. If the game is one of the best endings I've ever seen, then maybe it would be one of my favorite games of all time. If the ending is just meh, then it's a good game, but not a, not a groundbreaking, blow my mind game, right? If the ending sucks, I might hate it. It really could be a big determining factor. That's why I don't want to make determinations now. I'll tell you this, as of now, I still like Alan Wake 2 better. I think the plot of Alan Wake 2 and some of the unique mechanics of that game made it feel like an insanely unique experience. Not to say that this game isn't too, but right now, I would say, yes, I did like Alan Wake 2 more, but my opinion could change.
I don't know if your opinion would change, DSP, even if you did beat Baldur's Gate 3, because Baldur's Gate 3 just has too much gameplay. And from what I've seen in your gameplay of Alan Wake 2, it seemed like it was just a walking simulator, and that's definitely more up your alley. As little gameplay as possible, so you can basically just sit there and watch the cutscenes like it's a movie, giving no legitimate commentary, and every once in a while inserting an unnecessary goat laugh that confuses everybody.
By the time I beat the game. Of course, the question is, now when will I beat it? Because again, I'm not someone who could just sit around for 3 months playing one video game. Don't have that luxury. So who knows what's going to happen in this ending? I have no clue, right? I go, anyway, we might not see it for 3 more months, right? Literally, because if I'm only playing this game once a week, so you figure 3 hours a week, 4 weeks a month, that's what, 12 hours a month? So 3 more months. So, you know, March, April, I'll beat it at the end of May, right? We'll finally see the fucking ending. When it's that drawn out, does anyone even care?
You're supposed to be the one that cares, stupid. You're the one that's supposed to be engaged in the story. You're the one that's supposed to care. And it's that engagement and care from you that's supposed to draw in viewers, that's supposed to make people actually care what you have to say, I would imagine. And I have to ask again how Larian Studios was supposed to take your busy schedule into account when they were making the game. How your inability to beat the game in a reasonable amount of time is necessarily a bad thing about the game.
That's the sad fact about a game like this too, is when you have a game with that much content, it's that long, a lot of people will just never finish it. And that's sad because the game's good, right? You want people to see the ending of their big endeavor, this giant masterpiece game you made. But when you make it that daunting to get to the finish line, a lot of people will never make it. It's like running an insanely long marathon. People just give up halfway through, right? What are you going to do? Even if it's an amazing marathon with the best running conditions and whatever, you still might not make it, you know?
Yeah, a lot of people aren't going to reach the ending, DSP. That happens with games all of the time, especially when you play on PC. Everybody I know has a backlog of games that they started and just never finished, myself included. I don't even finish games anymore. But I do want to point out, just a second ago, he was asking how many people are going to care by the end, and somebody in his chat called him out. Cream Sardine said, you get support every stream. How do people not care? And he's got a point, and that's exactly what I was saying earlier in the video. People clearly care. It's DSP who doesn't give a shit about the game, because he has a dedicated audience that is showing up stream after stream and making sure that he hits those tips goals, which is how he has trained them to show that they care about something.
So, man, I don't know. Overall, I'm not exactly sure how to feel about the game yet, but I do like it a lot. I'm having tons of fun with it. Obviously, I love streaming this game with you guys, and the engagement you give me and the fun that we've had has been pretty outstanding, okay? So, I guess we'll see continuing forward. Will people still keep coming for the game if I'm only playing it once a week because I'm focusing on Final Fantasy and then other games? I hope so. I want to see the end. After 100 hours, I do not want to basically give up on the game now. I want to see the conclusion. But man, it's going to be hard to get there. It's so goddamn long. You know? I guess we'll find out. Okay. So, Baldur's Gate 3, thumbs up. Looking forward to more, but it is going to get downgraded. It's not going to be played as much.
So after 100 hours of gameplay, or rather 100 hours of streaming the game, because we all know how little gameplay actually goes on the gameplay stream, DSP is still incapable of actually giving a solid opinion on the game simply because he hasn't seen the ending yet. The credits didn't roll. How does he know how he feels about the game so far? He's only 100 hours in, but despite enjoying the game and receiving all of the support that he asked for, including engagement in the actual chat, he's still looking to put it on the back burner. At least that's what he says. But because of the way it looks right now, given that hindsight is 50-50 and this clip is as old as it is, it sounds like Baldur's Gate 3 is going to have a very short time on the back burner, instead going to come back as soon as possible, because Final Fantasy VII just isn't doing it. And that's going to be the end of this clip, but before we go, we're going to take a look at a couple more comments today. So of course, big ups to all the members, I appreciate you guys. Renee says, I must have played this game wrong, dude. I started to play 1 almost 2 months after DSP, didn't know anything about D&D, and somehow took me 80 hours to beat verse 110 of his, and I didn't have a single complaint. What did I do wrong? By the way, I had a lot of fun with Karlach in Minthara. Oh boy. Well, don't let DSP know that you possibly had fun with the romance mechanic that's in the game, or he might just call you a moron. And to answer your question, you're clearly lying. You must have had prerequisite knowledge. That's the only way that it's possible to enjoy the game and beat it in sub 100 hours. So get debunked. Ack. Kanan Trom says, watching him play BG3 BG3 is akin to a monkey attempting a math problem, constant complaints and refusal to adapt to the in-game mechanics. Honestly, I feel like that's always watching DSP play a game. It's not exclusive to BG3. The guy at this point is pretty much incapable of enjoying a game or learning basic game mechanics. BG3 is just the best example as of late. Razor Sharp says Phil's been a huge flip-flopper with BG3 the entire time. When he started playing, he was extremely negative, even though he got good support. And the game was even donated to him. I think it's an ego thing with him. I think him being wrong on BG3 getting Game of the Year and his detractors wanting him to play it hurts Phil's ego, but he also sees the benefit in playing it. Well, it's definitely a combination of all those things. But of course, the only reason that we are still playing the game is because of the money. Had the support not rolled in the way that it did and continues to do, there's no way in hell DSP would be caught dead still playing this game. He had to dropped it a long time ago. But shout out to anybody who watched the video, especially if you made it this far. And I hope to catch all of you guys in the next video, but until then, make sure that you check out other detractor content and dive deeper into that. Snortex.